Are you a good person? Well, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm pretty sure you ask yourself this question sometimes because you're constantly trying to find ways to develop yourself to become a better person. And doing good for others and yourself is such a big part of this self-improvement journey. However, is doing good always good? Who exactly defines what is good or what's bad? What is right or what is wrong? So we have the king of fried rice, the king of fruits, the king of the jungle. What about the king of goodness? Hi, my name is Kaisin. I'm your host for this episode, and you're listening to the Handful of Leaves podcast, where we bring you practical Buddhist wisdom for a happier life. You know, the path to happiness isn't a smooth one. We'll definitely meet with setbacks and challenges around work, relationships, mental well being, and so much more. In this podcast, we discuss these realities of life and explore how we can bring the Dhamma closer to home so that we can navigate the complexities of life just a little better. Besides this podcast, we also share resources and insights on our Instagram, Facebook, and Telegram channel. Please subscribe if you haven't already done so. In this very episode, we have a chat with Sister Sylvia Bay. She graduated with a BA Honours First Class in Buddhist Studies from the Buddhist and Pali University of Sri Lanka in 2000. Sister Sylvia isn't just academically smart. Since 1992, she's been dedicating her life to the practice and serving the community. She's been doing so by dedicating time outside of work to give Dhamma talks and lectures. And practical application of the Dhamma is always heavily emphasized in all her sharings. Today, she'll be opening our minds on the topic of what it means to be good and the tipping point when doing good turns bad. Trust me, it's filled with so much insights. I personally had a lot of aha moments, and I encourage you to take a notepad and start taking down some notes. Now, let's begin. Hi, Sister Sylvia. Good to have you here.
Nice to see you too.
It's really good to have you because today we are exploring something that is quite, I would say, mind-boggling because, you know, in Buddhism, we talk about doing good, avoiding evil, and purifying the mind.
Yes.
And what I think is mind-boggling is the definition of good because there are, like, you know, people sometimes they would justify their act to say that, oh, I do this because, but it's a little bit gray as well. And there are a lot of questions that I have for you to kind of explore that gray area. And perhaps we can start off with, what is your definition of good?
This thing about good, people kind of know, right? I mean, we all have, all of us, any of us, even the little ones, will have some sense of what's good and bad. And typically, if you ask people, why is this good or why is this bad? You'll boil down to a few things. One, it has to do with feelings, meaning if you feel really unpleasant, and because it's so unpleasant, the instinct is to react to that in a way that will cause pain or more problems for yourself or for others. And because you do that, it will create pain or suffering for yourself or others. Generally, it's like that. Huh? So you think about it, let's say I get angry. Anger is an unpleasant sensation. So when one feels anger, one will say something or do something that allow you to express that anger. And in saying or in doing, the odds are it hurts someone, whether it's yourself or another. And then when you step back, you yourself, the one who was angry, when you step back and you look at the episode, there will arise a sense of maybe guilt conscience, maybe a bit of shame, the sense that maybe I should have done that. So there's regret and there is remorse. Now, the whole chain, if anybody in a similar situation, it's likely to say that's bad. That's not good. Okay. Conversely, suppose, let's say, you were very kind, you saw people hurting, you came forward, you helped. And then you turn away and you say, that's a very nice feeling. I really feel happy. I feel light. There's pleasure, it's pleasant sensation. And then others observing that act will also say, oh, that's a very good act. Because why? They also feel pleasure. They feel the pleasant sensation. So one thing about what's good or bad has to do with feeling, which is why for a lot of people, there is generally some common instinctive appreciation of the act as good or bad. You understand? So the feeling is involved in it. But it's not all about feeling. We know that. For instance, sometimes you feel unpleasant. So like righteousness, right? So someone get bullied, and then you look at it and you go, that's not nice. So there's this sense that this is wrong. There is unpleasant. But you know, when you feel sorry for someone, that's considered good. But the feeling is not good.
So I hear a couple of things. So one, it's you yourself must feel pleasant.
Generally.
It has to stem from wanting to do good. Then there must be some form of feedback as well, right? So other people are approving of your act.
Yes.
However, I'm just thinking in a very gray situation where maybe somebody is bullied and I feel righteous that this person mustn't do this. And then I act on my feelings, and it might either be scolding that person or maybe I might retaliate. And people around me might say, wow, you are so brave to do that. Then is it still good, or is it?
Now we go back and we unpack this one. Okay, let's unpack this. So when you feel sorry for the victim, at that point, what arises is empathy. Empathy is the condition that allows you to continue doing something good for another. So empathy is a good thing. But because our feelings and reactions, they proliferate fast. They react fast and they proliferate fast. So the result is anger will come up. As you put it, righteousness. Righteousness is anger. It's a sense of justice, which is anger, okay? When that comes up, what is good is now being stained. What would have been good has now become somewhat stained by our sense of righteous anger. And that's why there is also that sensation of unpleasantness. That because it's unpleasant, you want to react, whether to scold or to stand up for somebody, you want to react. And the words that come out is intended to hurt, to beat the bully. So all this is downstream already. Now what was initially would have been a good reaction has now become not good. Because now we are experiencing a lot of wanting, a lot which will create more pain for yourself and for others. So if you ask me, what would I consider good is a speech or an act that will lead to benefits and happiness for yourself and for others. It's always for Buddhism, it's always for yourself and for others. It's not a zero-sum game. It has to be when there is communal or common, the raising of common or communal interest, benefit, happiness, welfare. That's the usual. That in my mind, that's what I would consider is good and correct. And anything that leads to pain, suffering, it will cause hurt for people. It will diminish interest, welfare, happiness. Those are considered bad, no good. So it's actually not difficult. It's pretty straightforward. And how do you know what one is good or not? You will experience it through the feelings. You will for sure you will have the sensation. I'll give you an example. Suppose, let's say you lost somebody, someone very close to you, and there is a part in you that grieve. No one would say that's bad per se, because it doesn't hurt another person, but it's pain, right? You lost somebody, you miss the person, you experience pain, right? The fact that you experience pain means there is attachment, there is longing. Attachment, longing is always a condition for problems now and in the future. And in that sense, any form of craving or wanting or longing, any form of it is not good, unskillful, akusala, any form of it.
Let's go back to what you said about any speech or action should be for the welfare and benefit of others and yourself.
Yes.
How do you measure that benefit? Because I'll give you an example. Like, I think in today's day and age, there are a lot of activists, small groups wanting to fight for social justice or environmentalism. And it's always like there's two sides to a coin, right? Somebody feels that it's valuable to say be vegetarian. And some people feel like, no, it's not really to my advantage and my welfare. And it's such an inconvenient thing. And I don't feel happy about it as well. So then it becomes like a dichotomy, or in the process of wanting to do good, perhaps somebody else's happiness is being compromised.
Yes.
Then how do we, like, isn't it very based on what an individual would value? Then is there something which everyone would agree upon? Like, who defines the benefit and who defines what's good? Isn't it very subjective?
Of course, there's some degree of subjectivity. That is true. In fact, in how each and every person view the world, it's subjective anyway. For sure, in anything that you undertake, if someone perceives that his interest is infringed on, that his happiness is compromised, he will perceive you as not nice to him, not doing good by him. That is true. And there are many causes that people get themselves into, that they get very righteous, very active. They're very active and they're very enthusiastic. But if you think a bit harder, it's questionable about the end results of the causes. That is true. I acknowledge that and I agree to that. So let's think back about what makes it right and what makes it wrong. I think intention. If your intention, so you see, the Buddha always talk about intention and how it's done, and then the results. There are three parts to it. So if your intention was wholesome, kusala, wholesome, and you really mean for people for a common good that comes out of it, and everyone can benefit from it. If that's your intention, then you will experience it as pleasant. If your intention is pure, you will experience it as, in terms of feeling, you will experience it as pleasant. If you said the cause is pure, like protecting life, it is pure, but your feeling about it is unpleasant or painful, then at that point, whatever you say, your motivation is still unwholesome. I'll give you an example. Let's say pro-life. People who fight for pro-life, and then some of them get so angry, right? That you respect life is pure. But because you're angry with others who don't share your views, and therefore, at the point when you feel pain, that motivation has already turned into into unwholesome. You just didn't realize it. Do you understand? It's the same thing. You campaign for the weather and climate, and then you're doing that because you understand the science that man is already paying for the sins of the past. You understand that. But now you're angry that there's a whole bunch of people who are irresponsible and unreasonable, and they really don't care. So there is anger. So your cause may be good, but because your mind is now narrowly focused on the selfishness of others, the cause is still wholesome, but your motivations are no longer wholesome. And that is why your experience of that is now painful. That's why it's so difficult for people to realize whether or not they are still on the path of righteousness and wholesomeness. And really for you to always constantly be mindful that the moment you experience pain, your mind has already shifted into unwholesome. It's anger, there is craving, and now you're doing no one any good. Why? Because the words that come out of your mouth or the things that you want to do may be an expression of anger as opposed to the emphasis on what's right. A reminder of the pure intent. No, you have already shifted. You're now going to punish, to go and hit, to do things that will cause more harm to the cause than good. So this is with regards to intention. Now we come to the actual act itself in defense of what you are advocating. The actual act. These acts, just remember this, if your act is going to lead to more anger, shaming others into doing the right thing, that kind of thing is not wholesome. It is not good. Why is it not good? Because in any act or any speech that leads to people experiencing anger, unwholesome mental states, your speech and your action have already caused harm. Then whatever good that you have in mind has already been negated by your words and action. So what good is it? What right effects are you generating? You're not generating any right effect. So the first part is how you think. The second part is how you act or speak. And then finally, the consequence, the impact that it has. So if you are motivated correctly, but because you didn't watch your mind and it has already turned negative, the cause may still be righteous. But how you think about it and how you act about it have already become unwholesome. It's not the same.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because I also personally would notice perhaps there's some form of attachment, wanting other people to kind of fit my own ideals.
Yes.
And there's a lot of judging in the process as well. And it's a valuable point that you pointed out, that it doesn't matter how people judge you, because in my mind, it's very difficult to please everybody, right? My intention might be pure,
Yes.
and I might go through the motion and execute my pure intention in a skillful way. But if the other person is still going to be angry about it, then do I have to feel the need and the sense to fit that person's ideal? Then it will just be a very stressful life to lead.
Then you are in the world already. It's in the
Yes.
world of action reaction. In some countries, in some regional countries, when you go there, you see pots and pots of water that they leave outside their house for travelers to be able to drink. That's very pure. That's like, I want to be kind and take a drink if you need one. And that's correct. You put the item on the table and you walk away because then you're saying, I'm not invested in the outcome. I'm only invested in the purity of the act, but the outcome of it, I walk away from it. I don't want to hang around and be really caught up in why is it not working, la 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 la.
Speaking of that, when you talk about not being invested in the outcome, Personally, I think it's very difficult because the outcome is the most tangible, right? People can't read minds. And when we talk about being good, we have certain guidelines to follow, say, don't lie, don't kill. And there is the experience also in the process, like, oh, perhaps I have accidentally told a white lie, or I've lied intentionally out of a habit. And then I go into this self-guilt kind of mode. Like, how do you reconcile? Because the outcome is bad, right? I'm not supposed to lie, but then I'm judging my intention, So how does one not be invested in the outcome?
When we're talking about campaigning for the climate, and that's a cause, a social cause, a social set of conditions that you're trying to create. What you were referring to separately is about precepts, not telling lies and not killing, not stealing, meaning the choices you make at a very narrow tactical level. The other one is you're talking about a goal. So and there's more strategic thing. It's like, how do I live my life? How do I raise children? That's a goal. And then in that goal, there are many steps and many acts and many things that you do. Those minute ones is a separate thing. Okay, we take them separately. Okay, specifically on this issue about precepts, keeping to precepts, that you're feeling bad because you didn't do it right. I believe if you understand why the rules are crafted like this, meaning what is the larger objective, then you know how to calibrate your life, calibrate the choices. And you don't feel bad when you are calibrating. I'll give you an example, okay? Let's take lying. The reason is because the consequences on our mind, if you generate shades to explain reality, and your shades do not directly correlate with reality, so you're shading truth, right? When you do that, your mind starts to store your version. In the process of all these narratives being stored in all the different shades, not absolute truth. So you're murky with the truth. Okay. A point will come when the mind can't quite tell accurately what is fact and what is not. So the fuzziness of perception of reality, your fuzziness, you become very fuzzy, at some point becomes your reality. For anyone who's practicing to see reality as is, this condition of the mind really will be a huge obstacle to practice, to realizing the true nature of the mind and be able to kind of shrug away the negative instincts and become a good person, properly wholesome, wise, clear person. Your effort to become like this, it's going to be seriously undermined by fuzziness. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is with regards to your reputation in society. This is the part that not a lot of people talk about, because you don't realize, they may or may not realize that this is an important point, which is something the Buddha had talked about. When someone does not tell absolute truth, it will hit his credibility, his social standing, his credibility. His words will not be taken seriously in an assembly. This is how it was said in the sutta. Okay, so you think about it. You shade truths. People find out about your shading, because truths have a certain way of kind of emerging, right? Okay. Then at some point you will have a reputation. Hey, she's very loose with truths. Sure, now you have a problem. You have a credibility problem. So for yourself internally, you can't quite tell what's real. For the world externally, your words is questionable. People will say, is this a lie? If you're asking me that, the odds are you're being loose with the fact. Then you decide lah. Do you want to proceed with that looseness, knowing that at some point it may cost you your ability to see things clearly? And why do you want to do that? So we uphold these precepts, whether it's about the truth, whether it's about not being greedy and taking things not given to you, whether it's about honesty in relationship, etc., etc., etc. It really is because all these choices leave serious imprints on the mind. It can change your character. It can affect your relationship with people. It can cost you what I call it social cost, your standing in society and so on. So those are the tactical ones. Now comes the bigger issue, the more strategic one, the goal, the end goal, right? The big cause. How not to want to be, how not to be invested with the outcome. If you're invested with any outcome, there is in you a clinging, a craving, a desire. You must, it's not right or wrong. You just must know that the more invested you are, the more stress you will feel, the more pain you will experience, the more disappointment is likely to come your way. So the more intense your attachment, the more you must be prepared to accept disappointment. That's the cost.
So I'm hearing a lot of common thread in your points that the attachment, the desire, having anger, these are considered unwholesome.
Mm-hmm.
But does that mean that we shouldn't have desire at all? How about the desire to be good? At what point would we know that the desire for good will actually turn sour and become bad?
Okay. Desire for good is good only because it leads to good. Desiring to be good means it's the start point of downstream choices that will lead to an outcome where you experience peace, calm, contentment, the cessation of angst. That's why desire for good is good. Any other forms of desire that leads to an increase in agitation, increase in pain and suffering, then those desires are unconducive for your welfare. For some, it sounds, oh, this is so tall order. For some people, but you just have to bring it down to our personal level. Bring it home to the practice, to your daily experience. If you say, I wish to be a good person, I want to learn to be a good person, then, okay, what does it mean downstream, right? I will read up on what makes a good person. I go and listen to talks. I watch shows and I try and model behavior, learn from others. If this fellow says it like that, it's a good thing, right? And if you're very serious about wanting to be a good person, you will build up on your sense of guilt when you're not doing good. You feel shame when someone tells you, hey, that's not nice. You feel shame. So you're basically quietly, gently generating the conditions that will keep you on track to being a good person. That causes nobody's harm, it doesn't create pain for others, that when people are in your space, they kind of enjoy being with you, okay? Those are good. Now let's take it differently. Let's say I now desire to push for vaccination for everybody. Can you see the difference? You get agitated, you go and stand out paper, flyer, go and hound somebody. Why you not vaccinated? Why you not vaccinated? What is wrong with you? Let me explain to you. So as you talk, you get more agitated. The fellow listening to you get more agitated. The whole world around you get more agitated. Is that good for anyone?
What I'm hearing is that there are a lot of causes. They really kind of is a means to an end, right? Like, I want to keep my precepts, or I want people to take the vaccine. At the end of the day, it's really about the welfare, the harmony, or feeling peace. So I will use my mental state as a yardstick. But you also mentioned about shame and guilt, and in the Buddhist space, we talk about hiri ottappa, this sense of moral shame. And then I'm also thinking on behalf of the listener and the viewers, isn't shame and guilt an unpleasant feeling? And some people
Yes.
might think, I don't think I am moral enough or I'm good enough to even be on the path. Or, oh, I cannot, it's too hard. I cannot meditate because I'm not very peaceful. I feel a lot of shame. It's very unpleasant. So is shame and guilt or unpleasant feeling part of the process? We have to be patient with it until we see the peace. And again, how do we tell? It's such a fine balance.
Okay, hiri otapa. Hiri is conscience, moral conscience. This is internal. You like it or not, it's there. It's built into all humans. It's a condition. And we know that it's built in because we also know of, or rather studies have shown that psychopaths don't have that. It cannot be turned on. That part of the brain doesn't light up. It actually lights up, okay? And what the Buddha has taught is use this natural state to protect yourself in your practice. It's considered a good thing because it's what will keep you from undertaking actions that will cause you problems in your cultivation exercise. For instance, this precepts, right? Don't take lie, don't take what's not given. If you have conscience, you don't need this precept there to tell you cannot do that. You cannot kill. Don't try not to do that. You just don't want to do it because when you do it, you feel bad. Okay? Then on days when you're very angry, very, very angry, you want to smack someone. But that part of you that holds you back, if this conscience is very strong, you are reminded that there is a cost to undertaking an action that causes another pain. You will be reminded so that you are taught never to do it. Not that you will never do it, but if you're constantly reminded, don't do it because you cannot sleep at night, then when you are confronted with that situation, a new situation, but it's similar, you will not do it because you remember it will cost you sleepless night. So that's conscience. Shame is this sense of a need for communal approval. And I believe that this is also in your DNA. This part about needing the approval of others, right? I believe, I have no proof. I believe this is also part of our DNA because possibly built in during the time when man was living in a very dangerous world. And the only way he can survive is when he has others like him. And together they help each other. In order to be able to continue staying with others, then you must conform to a certain behavior that communally they agree to. So your sense of shame is cultural. It is condition of sort, and it changes over time. But it's really because there is a so internally you want to be accepted, and the manifestation of that is you will mirror behavior. You will follow what people do. You will learn where all the OB markers are so that you are accepted within this community. Okay, so these two pillars for practice, right? It is to help the individual navigate and stay on the path that will give him a sense of peace. When you undertake an action that's straight out of these two OB markers, you will have no sense of peace. They are what I call the hard step parents. Smack you and then I will not transgress because they're hard. And initially it is difficult, but over time you can appreciate it. You can appreciate these two. If you are generally okay, then these two in your life hold you to a wholesome path, you're okay with it. Then over time you feel very peaceful. Then you are very grateful for these two that had kept you in check initially. Then conversely, you're a very angry person. Then these two you will resent. Then you act on your anger, you get more frustrated. So these two fellas now become very hard for you. And they're trying very hard to hold you in check. But if you refuse to, at some point, you drop these two. You say, heck, I am really so bad, right? Who cares? So you will drop your conscience. You will not allow people to shame you, right? Now you're forcefully removing these two pillars. You have no sense of shame. You have no sense of guilt. You will continue to do whatever you want, creating more pain, discomfort, no peace of mind, more angst for yourself. So now you're spiraling into the negative. It's very hard to explain these things because really they're conditional. And you just basically pick a point of, in this circle, right? The chicken and egg, you pick the chicken and you work from there. And then you lead back to the egg, and then back to the chicken. You know, it sounds like that, but unfortunately, that's life. You just got to start somewhere.
I know, because some people would say, I need to be peaceful first, and then I do all this, good causes. But some people say, okay, I do causes first, and then eventually I will feel more at peace, right? Then that's where the chicken and egg comes in.
Absolutely.
And I think it does require some kind of patience, isn't it? To be
absolutely.
to kind of go through that bump, to say, I've tried so hard, but I'm constantly getting it wrong. And then dealing with the guilt that's very intense. So how would you then advise people to be a little bit more patient when they're trying to be good?
I always try to start on the side of choice, because that part you can control. I mean, to the degree that you can, do I scold or do I not scold? Do I speak out or do I not speak out? That point, you still have a choice. The condition of your mind at that point, you didn't choose. I mean, you get angry and angry and angry. It just happens. Okay, you didn't choose to be angry. But once the anger starts, you can choose to react or not. If you have clarity that if you give in to anger today, thinking that it's a temporary venting, now it doesn't work like that. For whatever choices that you make, it will leave some kind of a imprint on the mind. Living similar imprints for stretches means those imprints very hard to erase. That's why we must start somewhere. You want to overcome anger and become a more peaceful person, you must make a determination to say anger hurts, it causes problems for physical form, for the body, for the mind. It causes problem. It leaves lingering effects. So therefore, I will learn to moderate my anger. I will learn to tame it. Make that determination, then you must get started. Every time anger pips its head out, you must smack it back and say, I will not give in to you. I will now bring up friendliness. You will choke on trying to cough out friendliness initially. But if you link these two, I will moderate my anger, I will bring up friendliness, I'll moderate my anger, I will bring up friendliness. At some point, that balance will tilt. It becomes easier to bring up friendliness than anger. And it all started with you saying, you know what, I've had enough of this anger. I will get started.
Does it require some sense of wisdom and internalization? Otherwise, it can sound quite willful, right? Like we're just clenching our teeth and say, I will be friendly, I'll be friendly. And I mean, speaking from my own experience, when I started walking on the path, I was beating myself up a lot. And there's a lot of agitation in the process. And sometimes I kind of just want to throw in the towel, just like, how do I do it? Like, how do people do it? Why are they so nice? So like, how do you balance striving to be good, but then at the same time not being too willful, and just like just accepting things as they are and have that restful state?
In the method, right, in the training for lay people, I always talk about 4 mental states that you need. Sometimes the Buddha mentioned 5, but sometimes he mentions 4. You have faith, morality, generosity, wisdom. And you notice, wisdom pack is number 5. 4 or 5. So if it's 5, it will be faith. I use the Pali word sattva, which means having confidence, conviction, having faith in the teaching, the teacher, and so on. Okay. Then morality, and then he introduced one more sutta, which is learning the doctrine. So I repeat, it can be 4 or it can be 5 mental states. So when it is 4 mental state is faith, morality, generosity, wisdom. He talks about 5 mental states, the third one, faith, morality, learning, generosity, wisdom. Okay, so the extra one is learning. Okay. Now, why these 5 mental states, right? When you have faith in itself is pleasant sensation, very, very powerful, very pleasant. If you have faith in Buddha, Dhamma, or Sangha, the Buddha, his teaching, the monastic practice, if you have faith, people carrying that mental state will experience a pleasant sensation. Will be pleasant. Will not be painful. Then you say, yeah, but sometimes faith is painful. No, faith is not painful. What is painful is something else. Depending on the individual, I'll be able to figure out what it is, but it's not faith. Faith in itself is very pleasant. You don't believe it, right? If you don't believe me, you just sit down there at where you are and you say to yourself, I have faith. I believe. And then you just pause a while, look at the mind. You will see the mind as either neutral, or for those of you with very strong faith, you will immediately experience a surging joy. That's how powerful it can be. Okay? This is not difficult to polish. For a Buddhist, every day you go before the Buddha statue, the Buddha Rupa, you take a bow and you say to yourself, I have faith in you. You just have to do this every day. Momentarily, you will experience joy. And this joy, this faith is very important. It's very inspiring, motivating. It keeps people saying, I know it's difficult, but because I have faith, I can continue.
Would it be different if we turn it inwards? I mean, for those who are non-religious, right?
Yes.
Can they say, I have faith in myself to be a good person, or to be happier, to be more at peace? Would there be a difference?
There is a slight difference, because if for the longest time you were not exactly the nicest person, you say, I have faith in myself to be a nice person, great. At that point, you enjoy a little, yes, I do feel good about this. Then you don't know how. If you don't know how, you only say, I can do it, but you don't know how to do it. At some point, disappointment, doubt will start. So that is why you need the other mental states. So faith is step 1, right? And step 2 is then morality, then generosity, and then wisdom, right? So these other mental states, they work collectively to inspire you and keep you on the practice. You take away the other mental states and you have only faith, nothing else. Then this faith is not strong. It's not sitting on firm foundation. It is where that individual saying, I believe Buddha. Then when life hits you all kinds of curveballs, and you at some point your faith will wear thin for sure, because you have nothing beyond faith. If you have faith and you are a good person, so morality, right? I'm a good person. I learn to do good, avoid evil, etc., etc. Then I practice generosity, and generosity is another lecture by itself. It's a long lecture by itself. Okay, but let's say that you practice generosity. Giving is just one small part of generosity. Generosity of spirit, generosity of it's forgiveness, it's generosity. Embracing another is generosity. Giving up your views, your biases is generosity, etc., etc. Okay, so you have generosity, and then you have wisdom. Wisdom is understanding transient nature of life, understanding mortality, so to speak, learning not to hold on to things because holding on will only give you pain. So all these, there's yet another series of talks there. But all these understanding of the nature of mind, all these you put together, that then your mental, you have the relevant tools that will keep you anchored to being good, doing good. And you are only occasionally you trip because you are overwhelmed by emotions, and then you trip a bit, but you will pick yourself up very quickly and you revert to you basically hop onto the train again, and you are okay on this wholesome adventure. You'll be fine.
Do you have like a mantra or a sentence to help people who are too harsh on themselves?
Actually, what you said earlier was correct, patience. But having said that, I will be a bit careful here. Patience must not be used as an excuse. Oh, I'm patient, therefore I can forgive myself anything. It should not be used as an excuse for laziness or for giving yourself discount on the practice. Patience is, to me, it's more like you moderate the harshness. Moderate the part of you that is very judging, that you hold yourself to very high standards, and you judge yourself to fall short of that standard that you set, and you tell yourself it's okay to moderate. So patience to me is moderation. It's accepting that there are some conditions that are hard to overcome, and you moderate expectations, and you at every step when you do well, you tell yourself, now this is the correct thing to do. Well done. Good job. So you learn to pat yourself on the back. So patience lead to this kind of practices. Patience is powerful because if it sits on wisdom. So understand that in our practice, in our cultivation, it's not, the mental states are not held in isolation. They must work in conjunction with others. Which is why if you look at the Buddhist teaching, very often he'll tell you about 7 factors of enlightenment, or the 5 powers of the mind, or the 4 the superpower states of mind, etc., etc. It's always a few. They're all mental states. All of them are mental states. And all these mental states are always taught as a cluster, because alone it doesn't work. You need a few to hold together a set of conditions conducive for practice, conducive for staying good. Why? Because you are overcoming habits and instincts. And habits and instincts have been formed through millennia, a long time. You cannot overcome these states overnight. It cannot be done. So when I said earlier about patience, moderation, lowering your bar and all those things, it's in recognition that whomever you are, whatever you are today, has been formed through millennium. And you don't even remember all the conditions in the past that led to a takeaway set baseline that now, centuries later, still surface. You don't remember what was the condition, but now you got to bear with it. So when you understand enough that who you are is the result of conditions from a long ago, and so Therefore, you need time to understand yourself better. You need time to learn to overcome or override an earlier set of, I don't know, carving of your instincts, setting of your instincts. You need to override the earlier software and create new software.
So it can't just be a sit back and see what happens kind of patience, but it requires an active and deliberate effort to say, I forgive, and now I'm taking action with certain mental models or framework to be better. How do we know when it's okay to give into our desires? Say, if I have a stressful day at work, I know meditating would help me relieve stress and it's good for me, but I don't have the mental capacity and energy to sit on the cushion. I would rather watch YouTube videos. And then again, the cycle repeats, right? Like, guilt trip. Why do I do this? And sometimes maybe is it more helpful to say it's okay for me to just indulge in sensual desires and pleasures for just one day until I have the capacity to be more spiritual again? Like, how do you know when to give in to desires and when to not give in to desires?
There's no hard and fast rule about these things. It's an individual maturity. And this is what the Buddha had said. If you truly understand true direct knowledge and understanding, the words he used, direct knowledge and understanding, if you truly understand impermanence, meaning mortality, the pain of birth, rebirth, if you truly appreciate that, right, truly get it, that can generate its own momentum for not letting up on practice. So it's true, understanding your wisdom, that then you won't cave in. But the rest of us are not to that level of direct knowledge and understanding. The rest of us, in fact, for many of us, our embracing of the Dhamma and the practice is a little bit of I want my cake and eat it. What do I mean? I experience dukkha periodically. I find it so frustrating. Life is so dukkha. I agree. Therefore, I go into the Dhamma in anticipation that with practice, my experience of dukkha diminishes. So we go into Dhamma to raise the pleasure quotient, to reduce the dukkha quotient. And because of that, actually, we are still attached to pleasure. We have never really understood. We just want our cake and eat it. We want to enjoy the sensual pleasure in life as we have always enjoyed, without the punishment, the sense of pain that comes about because we don't understand Dhamma. For most of us, we fall into this category. And that is why in our practice, our so-called the meditation, the putting time aside for meditation, right? It's always lower on the list of things to do. Most of us are like that. Meditation, oh gosh, it's like I'm going to stare at my mind. It's just going to be so boring. and so because on the list of pleasurable thing, right, meditation doesn't usually rank very high. So meditation becomes like duty, which then adds on to the unpleasantness of it all. And we equate practice with meditation, which is really jialat, because that's not true. Practice is not meditation. Meditation is one part of practice. If you have wisdom, true insight, true understanding, you will never let up. Because you don't have true wisdom, true insight, true understanding, then practice is just a list of things I want to do. And sometimes it features higher because I'm inspired. Sometimes it drops to rock bottom because on these days, the world beckons. It is just like that. Is there a right or a wrong? There is no right or wrong. I would like to say right means no, press on, full steam ahead. But we're lay people, ma? And lay people means priorities a little different. And the priorities will start to change only with growing understanding and wisdom. The wisdom is what will cause you to reprioritize. And at some point, because you now rank practice very highly, that because of that, your progress, your insight, your understanding will take on a new momentum. And then it will spin in that wholesome and very energetically, in the Dhamma way, by itself. It's like you're driving on the road. Initially, you have all these road bumps, so you cannot go very far. But at some point, you have overcome the road bump, and now the road is clear ahead, and you can speed up. And how fast it takes for you to speed depends on how fast you get there. How fast you set the condition in place. And how fast you want to set the condition in place depends on how much pain you are now seeing.
So what I understand from your explanation on wisdom is that when we truly internalize that this is something that can be more sustainable than the fleeting pleasures, then it really just propels us. There's no sense of like willpower, I have to do it, it's a chore. And that's a very important quality, right? Because I also noticed that some people, they can feel very gung-ho at the start and say, I want to meditate. It's all about, clocking the number of hours on meditation. And of course, that's just one part of the practice. It's also like, oh, I am so good at keeping my precept. What is this other person doing? Why is he, not living up to that particular moral standard? Mm-hmm. But that itself might lack wisdom, because it's not so much about transcending dukkha, which is suffering, and it's not so much about being more at peace, and that then becomes like the yardstick, right? So wisdom is the essential mental quality to really help us be on the right track. And then circling back to where we started, in the process, when we have wisdom, we would naturally feel pleasant when we are doing a good act or doing a good cause. Yeah. Did I get it right?
Wisdom is a very deep mental state. And you can approach this from different angles. When there is wisdom, there is understanding. Understanding of what? Understanding of the concepts taught by the Buddha. Correct understanding. At a deeper level, when there is wisdom, there is not just understanding, but there is an ability to notice that in your daily life, there are you form conclusion that correlate with the teaching. You say, oh, I can see this. This is what the Buddha meant when he said all these things. Captured in this sutta, oh, this is what the Buddha meant. So wisdom is an enabler. It enables you to understand the teaching, be able to observe the phenomenon in daily life in direct reflection of the teaching. And wisdom also enables you to make the right choices. It means the choices that will help you grow in understanding, be a more peaceful and calmer person, more content, more at ease. Okay, so you will, wisdom enables you to pick wisely, choose wisely, focus your attention correctly, all gearing you towards realizing the driving forces of your mind, how it works. And so you continue in daily life, you continue to do the thing that will enable you to be happier. So wisdom fundamentally enables you to live happily. There is no unhappy wise person. I mean it. You can have bad conditions, but when there is wisdom, you don't feel too bad about it. Your experience of that is, okay, not great, but it's okay, I can live with this. So wisdom helps you to accept. And therefore you're okay. Even though the conditions are bad, it's really because this person knows how to let go. He may not know how to articulate to you how he managed to let go, but he knows how to. Buddha was just so brilliant. He captured it into a formula, training formula, DIY for everyone. So Buddha's wisdom superior to everyone else because he knows how to sum up the driving forces that leads to growth of wisdom, therefore growth of happiness.
I have one last question to wrap up this episode. So, talking about wisdom, do you have any actionable tips that the listeners can take away to grow in wisdom or in happiness?
What is this wisdom that I think would really help is to constantly remind ourselves whatever is transient, whatever is impermanent, feeling, perceiving, from mental volitional activities and so on and so forth. Everyone, they last for a mere nanosecond. The state itself lasts for a mere nanosecond. Grief, pain, anger, frustration, whatever it is, all that short. In a snap of a finger, it's over. The only time you really realize the meaning of this teaching, right? That in what is impermanent, it is painful. It's when you are diagnosed with terminal illness or someone you love is dead. But the reality is, it's always a condition of life. It is a condition of life that we will all die. But you see, we will happily, blindly roam through life completely oblivious of what is an inevitable situation. In what is inevitable, we are oblivious. That's our problem. Because of that, we have the delusion of control. What are you talking about? Delusion of control. I can control people's mind. I can convince people so I can get the outcome I want. Isn't it? This is all about control. So when you are mindful of this, that it's transient and impermanent, and therefore actually reality is weaker. And because of that, you don't have control. Control is a figment of our imagination. So then why is it so important to get this, internalize this? Why is it so important? So that you have incentive to avoid evil, do good. And why is that important? Only then can you be happy. Only when you can build your life rich with kindness, compassion, patience, acceptance. Then, moment to moment, you are at ease. Not disease. Dis-ease. You are at ease. You are peaceful.
To remind ourselves of the fleeting nature of life, we can do it through reflecting on death. And also in the process, we would see the first noble truth, which is there is suffering, there is dukkha, and that will propel us to then do what is beneficial, what is right. And through this cycle, that's where we become wiser, we are more aware and mindful of our actions, and it kind of like rinse and repeat.
Yes.
Correct? All right.
Yes.
Thanks a lot, Sister Sylvia. It's been such a pleasure to hear from you and a lot of insights. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, listeners, for tuning in. I hope you got as much value as I did. Please share with us what is your biggest takeaway. You can do so on our Telegram channel or wherever you are listening to this podcast. Please give us a review because it would really help us to reach more people. And please share if you know of anyone who can benefit from this. In the next episode, my co-host Cheryl and I will be touching on this topic a little deeper, exploring perspectives of how we can stand up for what is right in the Buddhist way. And whether anger is ever justified, how can we treat a person who has committed a bad deed? Stay tuned for the next episode. Meanwhile, stay happy and wise.